Court documents offering a new perspective on a medical provider out of Mojave County. She offered full body scans that she claimed could detect medical problems like cancer, and she treated those patients with products that the FBI says were not approved for human use. That's on this edition of the Arizona's Family Investigates podcast. I'm investigative reporter Amy Cutler, joined by my colleague Morgan Loew.
Yeah, Amy, her name is Mary Blakley, known to her patients as Dr. Mary. She worked as a medical provider for more than 20 years, according to the FBI, across 5 different states. At one point, she had an office in Scottsdale, but most recently, she was in Lake Havasu City.
And as part of our investigation, we spoke with several of her patients and their family members. They tell us in at least 2 cases, patients receiving treatment from her died. Yet even after the FBI raid, the provider's arrest, and federal charges, some of these patients are still standing behind her.
We encourage everybody to use ultrasound. I tell you, doctor.
This was Mary Blakley's sales pitch on her YouTube channel. For her patients seeking a holistic alternative, she was known as Dr. Mary.
We screen your whole entire body. Every organ has a normal size, texture.
These full body scans, Mary says, could detect all kinds of diseases and ailments, even cancer.
Okay, well, I'm from Europe, Karolinska Medical Institute.
She claimed to have 3 decades of experience that included training in Sweden, a PhD in vascular physics, and working at a cancer hospital.
While I was at the hospital, it was one of the best in the country. All we did was watch people die.
Eventually, Mary started her own practice in several states, including Colorado, Nevada, and most recently, Lake Havasu City, Arizona.
She really cared about helping people, to be honest about it.
As a licensed masseuse, this woman, who didn't want to share her name, says she worked with Mary at the London Bridge Wellness Center for the last few years.
Were you ever one of Dr. Mary's patients?
Yeah, I got a scan, of course, sure.
And did you feel like it was legitimate and helpful?
Yeah, it was actually.
Dr. Mary boasted a smart chip technology in her ultrasound machine, allowing for a more thorough scan.
My mother had been seeing her since 2018.
Christina Jones says her mother, Joanne, went to Mary for a second opinion. She had a lump in her throat. Her doctor recommended a biopsy, but Joanne wanted a holistic treatment and kept going back.
I had no reason to not believe. And then in 2023, June of 2023, she woke up one morning and she didn't have a voice.
Christina tells us things went downhill from there.
At that point, the cancer was so far gone that she ended up at Banner Hospital in Tucson, where they did a complete thyroidectomy. She ended up with a tracheotomy.
Joanne had stage 4 thyroid cancer. She was given less than a year to live. Christina says Mary denied that her mom had cancer.
Even after all that, she went back to Dr. Mary?
Yep, she did.
She tells us Mary sold her mother expensive creams and vitamins, which she used to the very end. Joanne died in August.
And it was that second opinion that basically, I believe wholeheartedly that it took her life.
Just months later, the FBI raided Mary's home and office. She and her husband, Fred Blakley, charged with mail and wire fraud, along with conspiracy. A new picture of Mary emerged.
Well, I'm a vascular physicist by degree.
According to the 9-count indictment, the couple owned and operated a series of unlicensed medical clinics, extracting millions of dollars from their clients by means of their false claims, offering their ineffective pseudotherapies in lieu of conventional treatment, depriving their trusted clients of the opportunity for continued life and health. Prosecutors say that included prescribing several drugs meant for animals as treatments for cancer and heart disease in humans. Court documents show that from 2021 to 2023, undercover FBI agents posed as customers, family members, and a potential business associate. In a motion to keep the couple detained, prosecutors called their case overwhelming.
It's unbelievable.
Charity Carson Hawk is Mary's estranged daughter. When they reconnected in 2018, she says she visited her mother's office and immediately became concerned something wasn't right. She says she knew her mother hadn't spent 30 years in Sweden or worked for a cancer hospital because her mother and Fred spent 4 years in federal prison for manufacturing meth.
I tried to warn these people. I tried. But I can only do so much.
We confirmed Charity filed a police report, one of 3 Lake Havasu City Police received since 2018. In 2 of them, the officer noted she had a PhD in physics and wasn't pretending to be a medical doctor.
If we don't have evidence to support that there's any kind of illegal activity, then we can't take any action.
But according to the indictment, there's no record of her having a PhD. Court records show she didn't take insurance. Instead, she accepted cash and gold.
I couldn't believe that she went to that extent to make up all these phony certificates and doctorate degrees.
Mary told police in 2023 her business is a research facility that all her patients sign a disclaimer notifying them her services are for informational purposes only. She also reportedly told the officer it's a private ministerial association and that patients sign a membership form. Included in that form, wording that restricted patients from talking to police or pursuing legal action against a fellow member, unless exposed as a clear and present danger of substantive evil.
Have you ever seen a medical professional asking a patient to sign forms like that?
Not in my experience.
The Blakleys moved around a lot, changing their name and the names of their practices.
I hope more people come forward and, express what, she's done to them and their families.
This case has gotten so complex, the FBI has launched an entire website seeking patients of Dr. Mary Blakley.
The Arizona Medical Board says it received at least 1 complaint about Dr. Mary. In response to our questions, they sent us a copy of the cease and desist letter they sent to her. But that was only issued after Mary was behind bars. So, Amy, you have been looking into this story for a long time. How was this alleged fraud able to go on for so long?
Yeah, I have thought a lot about this, and it really seems from talking to families, from talking to the community, from patients, she was very convincing. People wanted to believe in what she was saying to them, that she was able to really see these things and diagnose these conditions. I think there's also a legitimate fear sort of the medical community or sort of a healthy skepticism, so to speak. Mm-hmm. It also seems like in talking to Lake Havasu police, they just are not equipped to handle cases like this.
Yeah, these in reporting for 30 plus years, it seems like often when you call and there is a situation where it's not a violent crime that you're alleging, it's like maybe a white collar crime or something. I didn't get the product that I was promised, that I paid for. Police often say, well, this is a civil matter. Does it seem like that might have been the situation here?
It does. So we know that Lake Havasu City Police received 3 separate reports, and in 2 of those reports, the officer made contact with Mary and her husband, and she claimed that she had a PhD, and so they said, okay, well, she's not saying that she's a medical doctor. She is doing these ultrasounds. She's saying she has a PhD in vascular physics. That must be the case. And so they didn't pursue the case. In the 3rd case, they found that there was some credible evidence that maybe she wasn't exactly who she said she was. And then they went to the county attorney. The county attorney referred the case or urged police to refer the case to the state AG's office. And they have not said exactly what they did with the case. They have instead referred me to the FBI.
So FBI is looking at it now. Taking a step back, what was the appeal of going to somebody like this from the patient's point of view?
Yeah, I think that they wanted to believe that this scan could detect all kinds of different medical conditions and that it was as easy as taking some of these vitamins, eating a healthier diet, that, she had the answers for them. And in speaking to someone who works closely with her, she claims there have been several cases where Mary was able to actually diagnose medical conditions, plaque in different areas, or she said that patients followed up with their doctors and that what Mary had told them was in fact what the condition was.
Yeah, and it seems like today especially, there is a large segment of the population that is not skeptical of unorthodox medical treatments and medical advice. I mean, RFK Jr. is now the Health and Human Services Secretary, and that's somebody who has championed treatments for conditions and diseases and maladies that I think the mainstream medical community would probably say are not always accurate. That he's a vaccine skeptic. So from the outside, you would say, why would anybody believe this person? But when you look at it from that point of view, I guess it's easier to see how somebody could do this and play themselves off as this is something new, this is something different.
Yeah, and Mary really played to that skepticism. She really, she said that she had even at one point worked for a pharmaceutical company and had seen that this research was helpful, but the bottom line was profit was motivating everything. And so if they couldn't make money off of something, they wouldn't pursue it. And so I think that there's a lot of us who've seen doctors who feel like they're charging too much, or maybe it's profit that they're after, not, making someone or treating someone the way they need to be treated.
Right. Well, so Mary was half of this situation, because then we have Mary's husband, Fred. Like his wife, he's also charged with mail and wire fraud along with conspiracy. But according to court documents, Fred, just like Mary, is a felon, not legally allowed to have a gun, but was stockpiling dozens of weapons with a plan to use them.
We screen your whole entire body. Every organ has a normal size, texture.
As her husband and business partner, Fred Blakley was often at his wife's side. Prosecutors say for over 20 years, Mary posed as a medical provider, a doctor of vascular physics, operating medical clinics through which she claimed to diagnose and treat a variety of diseases and medical conditions. According to the indictment, she used a full-body scan, an ultrasound machine enhanced by her own proprietary smart chip technology. They prescribed to their clients various supplements, creams, and veterinary products as treatments for conditions purportedly discovered during the scans. But the feds say it was all a fraud.
She has no license to diagnose anybody. They had no power, no authority.
Charity Carson Hawk, Mary's estranged daughter, says she knew her mother was lying about her medical background for years because both Mary and Fred spent nearly 5 years in federal prison for manufacturing meth.
I asked the FBI, why did it take you guys so long?
Charity says she was interviewed by the feds as part of their investigation.
A really good friend was insisting that I go see her.
This man, who asked that we not show his face or give his name, tells us his friend said Mary could help identify any health issues before they get worse. But before spending a few $100s on an appointment, he looked into her background. What was the red flag for you?
The dates and times, the years don't match up. I couldn't even figure out how old she might be.
Mary claimed to have decades of experience.
Did that for 35 years in Sweden.
Really?
And then came to America.
She also claimed she spent 30 years at one of the best cancer hospitals in the country.
How long did you work in that cancer hospital
In America?
in the United States?
30 years.
This doesn't seem logical.
By 2021, the couple ended up on the feds' radar. According to court documents, undercover agents surveilled them for nearly 3 years. As part of a motion to keep the Blakeleys behind bars, prosecutors lay out how Fred maintained a workshop in a garage on his pastor's property in which he collected, built and modified firearms. Investigators found 30 guns along with 30,000 rounds of ammo. In a conversation in May 2023, Mary tells one of the undercover officers that him, meaning Fred, and the pastor have been making guns, thousands of guns. We're arming Arizona. In another conversation in August 2022, Fred says, we're going to have to go to war with our own government, a civil war. You better arm up good. I've got thousands of rounds of ammunition, and I'm ready to rock. And later, I'm planning on shooting some humans.
It makes the fraud all the more serious. And when
Paul Charlton is a former career prosecutor and served as the U.S. Attorney for Arizona. While the feds continue to investigate, we asked Charlton if laying out all this information meant additional charges against the Blakleys were likely. He pointed to their ages. Mary is 75, Fred is 60.
it probably means that if they're convicted on the fraud charges alone, that they may never see the light of day again, and the weapons charges may be wholly unnecessary.
As for that pastor, prosecutors haven't identified them, and it doesn't appear they've been charged. Now, the judge ruled on that motion, determining that the Blakleys should remain behind bars.
This story from the beginning with the medical part is like jaw-dropping. And then there's this second half. I don't even know where to start here, but let's start with this. You tracked down some people from this church. What was their reaction to all of this?
Yeah, so in speaking to some neighbors, they were able to connect me with the name of the church. And so I called them several times. People who answered didn't want to go on camera, but they are defending the Blakleys. They say that this couple, longtime members of the church, good people, they believe that this is all some kind of big misunderstanding.
A misunderstanding. They wanted to arm Arizonans. Is there anything that you learned about this? The arrest and that kind of thing that wasn't in that story that you put together that you think is interesting?
Well, so it was interesting to me, this pastor that he is alleged to have worked with. I'm told that he is a veteran, that he is very much into guns, and he really believes in the right for all of us to bear arms.
A gun-toting pastor.
Exactly. And that, again, he was very good friends with the Blakleys, and that maybe he didn't know all that was involved, but I really wanted to speak to the pastor, and so I had called him several times, but he has not called me back.
Wow. So what did Mary's patients say about Fred? Because you talked to a lot of them, or you talked to several of them at length.
Yes. And so they said that Fred was mostly out of the picture, that he would maybe answer some phones, sell some of the products, but he didn't actually use that souped up ultrasound machine. That was really Mary. And so, but there's still a lot of shock surrounding this, because they just didn't have any idea what he might have been up to. This whole stockpile of weapons was pretty surprising to all of them. But they said he seemed nice enough. He was, he always had his wife's back. He was just kind of in the background.
So you have this business that is suspect, and then you have this collection of weapons. Is there any deduction you could make from the relationship? Were they doing this business to buy guns? Were they doing the business to pay the rent, and this was their hobby? Or are these questions that we just don't know?
Yeah, I think that they're just questions we don't know at this point. We know that according to these court documents, the couple made a lot of money off of these clinics, millions of dollars.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And in talking to Mary's daughter, they didn't believe in traditional banks. So a lot of that money they stored, well, first they were accepting payment in cash and gold, but a lot of that was in the house. So there was also some talk about the church trying to get into their house and all of that. But it's unclear, but it certainly seems like they had made enough money from these clinics, and they were also selling these ultrasound machines to different providers across the country and training some folks in how these machines worked. So it seems like they were doing pretty well financially, at least according to these court documents.
And you guys traveled to Lake Havasu. What did people you spoke to in their neighborhood have to say about this?
Yeah, so neighbors were really surprised. They said that the couple seemed nice enough that they really kept to themselves. And they were very much aware of this raid when it happened. It was early on a weekday morning that all of this happened. And, they were saying this is not the kind of thing that happens in this quiet community. So they were all really taken aback by what was going on. Even, it was funny, all the neighbors sort of pointed me in the direction of this one woman who they said was kind of the neighborhood watch.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was, seems like she has her coffee on her, sits outside her house every morning. And so she was just watching this all unfold and said she just couldn't believe what was going on.
So they made allegedly millions of dollars off of this. Did they live in some kind of a mansion, or was this a normal neighborhood?
This looked like a normal neighborhood. But another part of why this may have been able to go on for so long is that they were changing the location of their business, the name of their business, their names. So we went to maybe 5 or 6 different addresses. So it seems in this last case, they owned that house, according to property records. But it was just an average house. It really didn't stand out from any of the others.
Did any of the neighbors know anything about them other than just, oh, this was Mary and Fred who lived down the street?
So they had mentioned, one of the neighbors had said that she had some back pain and that Mary had offered to scan her to kind of come up with an idea of what was behind it. She never went through with it. So there was some talk that maybe they were in the medical community. They often wore scrubs, but they didn't really have any sense of how large an operation it really was.
Wow. They have deep roots in that community. You said they moved around, or these sort of like transient, they've only lived there for a couple of years.
I think they've only lived there for a couple of years, but it was really hard to determine because we know they spent time in prison in Nevada, and then they went to Colorado. There was some time in Utah. And then I don't think that they lived in California, but they opened up practices there. Yeah, it was really hard to get a time frame. We know that they were at this latest wellness center where they were working for at least 7 years.
So we've now been talking about the results of what you were able to find out. Tell us a little bit about how you tracked these people down, how you found out this information about them.
Yeah, so this came through an FBI release, just mentioning that they had made this arrest and asking for patients of hers to come forward. And then we started digging and getting court documents, looking into the couple, trying to get a sense of what the situation is. Social media was also helpful in this because Mary had her own YouTube channel where she was advertising a lot of these services. And so that's when we started to notice there were some discrepancies in what she was saying. 30 years here, 30 years there. She's only 75. She couldn't have gone to college or gone to Sweden at 15. So there were things that just didn't add up. And so it was just looking into property records, making contact with the police department, putting in records requests, all of that.
When did it occur to you? Because the FBI puts out news releases all the time, and I'm probably not exaggerating when I say they don't have a lot of creative writers putting these releases out. I mean, it is just, they are bland, just the facts, ma'am. At what point when you were looking at this did you say, oh, wow, this could not only be a news story, but this could be a news story that really stands out?
Well, when they put down that there were 5 different names to the clinic, something was interesting, sort of piqued my interest there. And then the fact that they were using veterinary products, that they were selling their customers veterinary products which were not intended for human use. That's when I said, hey, this is something we should look into. And then the indictment was just, it was, page after page was just more incredible. You know, the fact that they spent time in prison, you know, I mean, how long this was able to go on for. I mean, just so many of the details of this seem like they could have been some unbelievable drama or soap opera, you know?
Yeah, I remember hearing you guys talk about this and saying, I don't know if they've actually been in Europe, but I'm pretty sure they've been in prison. Like, okay, that's fascinating.
I know, it really is. It's such a bizarre story. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. The judge has already set a trial date. It's expected to begin that trial on April 29th. If convicted, they face decades of prison time. And that's it. And that is it for this edition of the Arizona's Family Investigates podcast.